Arizona field office and the Arizona Faith. This meeting is being recorded. Just two really quick housekeeping items before we get going. Please mute your devices and hold any questions you've got till a little bit later on in the presentation. We're going to have two opportunities for questions. First, through some breakout rooms with leadership and staff from public housing authorities from across the state. And then also after that, we're going to have a quick break. Just to run through the agenda really briefly, I don't know if we can pop that up, Ellie. It's excellent. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Great. So first, we're going to have a set of introductions from Reverend Katie Sexton Wood from the Arizona Faith Network, Regional Administrator Jason Koo from HUD, and HUD Field Office Director Tammy Thomas. We've also got Margaret Skiffer from HUD's Office of Public and Indian Housing, who's going to talk about the voucher programs broadly and kind of what different types of vouchers are, how you might apply for them, how landlords interact with public housing authority. Before turning it over to Fernando Moraga for a brief conversation about source of income discrimination ordinances. And we're hoping to have a broader discussion about these ordinances later in the summer and highlight Tucson and Phoenix. These are very significant ordinances that have significant ramifications for communities, landlords, and tenants. And we want to give that its due through a broader conversation later. So keep an eye out for that invite. We're then going to have some breakout rooms with staff and leadership from public housing authorities from Mesa, Phoenix, Scottsdale, Tempe, and Tucson. Quick 5-minute break, some Q&A, and closing remarks from Reverend Katie. This should be a great conversation, and we're really just thrilled to see so many participants from all across Arizona. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Reverend Katie Sexton Wood.
Thank you, Solomon. I'm going to just pop up a really quick 101 on Arizona Faith Network. It's so good to be with you all. Thanks for showing up on a Monday morning. We know you could be a lot of places, but this is a really important conversation. So grateful to have partnered with the numerous leaders from HUD on the call today. We were actually brought together around a public health measure last fall and really started talking about housing as both an access issue and public health issue too here in Arizona. So beautiful partnerships have began out of that and will continue out of that as well. We know that faith communities have a lot of people that have just very intricate lives. And I know in my own congregation, there's a ton of landlords that have a second property that they really want to do some good with. So I'm excited to learn today. I just want to give a little bit of background on Arizona Faith Network. We are an interfaith organization through the state of Arizona. We bring together people of diverse faiths that are found all throughout the state of Arizona. We're a really old organization for Arizona timelines. We were started in 1946 as the Arizona Council of Churches. We still maintain a relationship with the National Council of Churches just as a volunteer basis. But in 1968, it became the Ecumenical Council, which means inter-Christian. And then in 2015, we became interfaith. And so since then, we've been really working hard to make a unified front of all the diverse traditions that are found throughout Arizona. So while we've been around for a while, we are very focused on addressing the issues that are happening today, like housing. So through interfaith dialogue, relationship building, we move to social justice advocacy and action for the goodness of Arizona and the common good of all of Arizonans. So it's a little bit of background on who we are. You can find out a lot more on arizonafaithnetwork.org and our efforts around affordable housing. We are particularly focused in through the great leadership of Ellie on how we can make a unique difference as people of faith around affordable housing. So what is the role of synagogues and mosques and churches that we can really help address this crisis that's going on and get folks into that safe place? So with that, I will stop and pass the microphone back.
Thank you, Reverend Katie. Jason, over to you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm Jason Pooh, HUD Regional Administrator for Region 9, which includes the great state of Arizona. I want to thank and acknowledge once again the Arizona Faith Network, the public housing authorities, and the Southwest Fair Housing Council who are participating, the cities of Phoenix, Tucson, Mesa, Tempe, and Scottsdale for being here, and of course our HUD staff for their hard work in making this convening possible. And of course, thank you to all of you out there who are participants and landlords who are interested in the program. As I mentioned, I'm the HUD Regional Administrator for Region 9. It covers not only Arizona, but also California, Hawaii, Nevada, and the Outer Pacific Islands. I was appointed to this position by President Biden at the end of 2021 and took office about 18 months ago. And also a former mayor and council member here in LA County, as well as a former business attorney with expertise in real estate, corporate finance, and venture capital. So with my backgrounds, it's my goal to align all levels of government and the public and private sector to address our housing affordability and homelessness crises throughout the region. And it's really collaborations like these, faith-based and neighborhood partnerships, where I can truly see all levels of government and the public and private sectors coming together and working together for the common good. And it's a win-win-win for all. It's a win-win-win because rents in many communities throughout Region 9 are leveling off or softening, and HUD vouchers are right now worth more than they've ever been worth before, creating what I'm calling an intersection in the marketplace, where rents paid under vouchers is very, very competitive with rents in the regular market. In addition, during the pandemic, these payments did not stop coming, meaning that many landlords who were in the voucher program did better than landlords who were not in the program. And all of this is just to say that for landlords, being part of the Housing Choice Voucher program right now just makes good business sense. When there's no trade-off between helping people, regular, everyday people, and collecting rents, then we have the ideal market conditions to truly meet the double bottom line. So I want to thank all of you again for your time and interest in HUD's voucher programs. Thank you again to all of the local partners and to all of you who are potential participants in the voucher program. I look forward to continuing this work and these partnerships and collaborations together with you. And now, please welcome someone many of you already know. It's our HUD Field Office Director for the state of Arizona, Tammy Thomas. Tammy, over to you.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you to all of our partners, Housing Authority partners, and the Arizona Faith Network, and to my colleagues, Margaret Skipper and Solomon, for helping to pull this all together. As Reverend Katie mentioned, this is a crucial conversation that we've been thinking about, trying to figure out, what HUD's role is in trying to expand the number of landlords into the Housing Choice Voucher program. And I think we sort of come up with something maybe as part of our discussion around HIV and AIDS and that kind of initiative, and that was in December, and it seemed like the best organization to try to help us reach as many people as possible to get more landlords into the program. And Solomon, if you could bring up the slide, or Ellie. So I just wanted to just kind of demonstrate what's going on and what we're seeing on the ground. Part of our function in the Office of Field Policy and Management is to just try to gauge what's going on with residents in local communities. So we get a number of calls, and customer services is one of our key operations, and just to see how sort of dire the situation is. People are looking for housing, and that is our, you can go to the next. Up further in the.
Ellie, I believe Tammy had a slide, Ellie, that's mine.
on one slide. But I guess that's not up there, so I have pulled up my own slide. Yeah.
There it is.
Thank you. This is what we're calling our ecosystem. This is how people, how we're categorizing the types of calls that we're getting into our office. And since October of 22 up through June 22nd, we have received over 1,500 calls from people on a variety of issues, but primarily what people are calling us about is how to find housing. Affordable housing is so severe. This is the number one issue that people are calling about. I mean, we have a housing resource guidebook. We're providing that information to people, but the waiting list for affordable housing and subsidized housing is enormously long, years and years long. Just to give you some sense of, the kind of properties that HUD subsidize, we have multifamily properties where the subsidy is in the unit and it stays with the unit. So there are 291 multifamily properties across the state of Arizona, and we have 11,300 subsidized units. On the public housing side, there's about 25,000 vouchers that have been made available and 4,300 public housing units. And based on the Arizona Department of Housing rough estimate, there are about 270,000 units of affordable housing that is still needed. So we've got a long way to go. It's going to take a lot of resources to close that gap. And part of what we want to do is to figure out ways to get more attention to this issue and to try to do as much as we can to close that gap. And that's where, faith organizations can play a vital role. So, just sort of a snapshot here from last month, where we had, run the same report.
Hi, Neil. How are you?
If you could mute your phone, that'd be great. From just a month ago, we had 781 calls for requests looking for affordable housing, and that has increased just by 100 more individuals or families looking for affordable housing. And then the other categories are just people who believe that they have been discriminated against, people who are on the verge of being evicted, and people who are living in conditions that are not suitable for housing. So we've got a number of issues that we are trying to address. And it isn't just about expanding the number of units that are available to people. It's also about making sure that people are stably housed. And that means not paying more than 30% of their income in rent. And so what we have now, since there is a little bit of easing in terms of how much market rents are relative to how much people earn, but we want to make sure that people are stably housed. And so that is our twin goals here. So with that, I will turn it back to Solomon, but thank you so much for your participation. This is an important discussion to have, and it's the beginning of the discussion and not the end, certainly. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. And yeah, I see we've got a whole number of questions kind of popping up already, and we're looking forward to answering as many of them as we can. I'd like to hand it over now to Margaret Skiffer from HUD's Office of Public and Indian Housing. Margaret brings deep organizational knowledge about the voucher programs, and we're really lucky to have her, not just at HUD, but certainly on this call today. Over to you, Margaret.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
And so Ellie, if you could start the slide for me. Thank you. Thank you. Again, my name is Margaret Skiffer. I am one of 4 portfolio management specialists in the Phoenix field office. And our role as a portfolio management specialist, Ellie, you can put that full screen back up for me. Our role as portfolio management specialists in the Office of Public Housing, we are the compliance officers for the various housing authorities and the housing authorities just for the state of Arizona. Next slide. So as you may be aware of, the Housing Choice Voucher Program, commonly known as Section 8, is a federal program, and it is the Section 8 of the U.S. Housing Act of 1937 is where you can find the federal statute. And then the program is also regulated by HUD under 24 CFR 982 for the program regulations. Next slide, Ellie. Next slide, Ellie. Again, the program is commonly known as Section 8 to most of you. And the program assists low income families, whether they're elderly, persons with disability, or just low income families, find affordable housing. That affordable housing needs to be safe and also needs to be a decent housing as it relates to any housing standards, and we'll get into that a little later. Voucher holders can rent a single family home, an apartment, or a townhouse in the private market. And the vouchers are administered locally by the local housing authority in the jurisdiction. Each housing authority has a distinct jurisdiction that they represent. Now, in the state of Arizona, not all counties or cities have housing authorities. So again, your local housing authority has a distinct jurisdiction that they administer vouchers. One other thing, and I don't think it's mentioned earlier in the slide, just for your information, vouchers are portable. For example, if you are a voucher holder in the city of Phoenix and desire to relocate to Mesa, or if you, because this is a federal program, if you desire to relocate to Los Angeles, then that is done through portability, and the housing authorities can go into more depth on how vouchers are portable. Next slide, Ellie. Our largest program under Section 8 is our tenant-based program, and that population of the tenant-based program serves all families. But we do have some specific other special purpose vouchers that target special populations. Under our VASH, which is our Veterans Affairs special purpose vouchers, our family unification, which we call FUP, tenant protection vouchers, foster youth, independence, our mainstream vouchers specifically are for non-elderly disabled, whereas similar to the VASH program, the vouchers for the VASH program is rental assistance for homeless veterans. And attached to the VASH program, the homeless veterans also are provided case management and clinical services directly through the VA. Some of our other programs, emergency housing and stabilization vouchers, are also vouchers specifically for the homeless population or folks that are at risk of becoming homeless, domestic violence, or even human trafficking. So these special purpose vouchers, again, target special populations. Not all housing authorities have every special purpose voucher funding, but the majority of them do. Next slide. And so how do they function? So the voucher is actually placed directly in the hands of that family that's being assisted. It allows the family makes the determination and consider what housing they need. That is not determined by HUD or not determined by the housing authority, but determined by the family. What type of housing they are choosing, where they choose to live. The family, of course, is informed by the housing authority if they're eligible. They also inform them about the eligible size of the unit for their particular family composition. The units that the families, or if it's a single family home, is inspected by the housing authority, and then the rent is also the rent amount of the subsidy is also determined by the housing authority. The housing authorities conduct a process called rent reasonableness, where they have to compare 3 unassisted units, the amenities of those units, the rent of those units with that one assisted unit, to make sure that the funding that is being paid for that unit is reasonable within the private market. Next slide. So the housing authority also determines a payment standard for that rent. That payment standard is generally needed to rent the moderate dwellings within the local market. The payment standard is determined as a part of the fair market rents. The fair market rents are identified and issued by HUD every year in October. And I'll just give you an example. Now, payment standards can be within 90 to 120% of the fair market rent. But let me just give you an example of fair market rents for 2023. In Phoenix, for example, or I should say the Phoenix metropolitan area, so that would include Phoenix and Mesa and Scottsdale and Tempe, Chandler, and some of the housing authorities in the Phoenix metropolitan area. And efficiency in the Phoenix metropolitan area is 1,344 for rent. That's the fair market rent, not the payment standard. Again, the payment standard can be between 90 to 120%. But in the Phoenix metropolitan area, it's 1,344. I heard there were some folks on the call from Tucson. An efficiency for Tucson would be 786. An efficiency in Yuma is 810. Again, that's the fair market rent. So that information can be found on the HUD website, or you can just Google fiscal year 2023 fair market rents, and it will give you the fair market rent amounts for an efficiency, a 1-bedroom through 4 bedrooms. So just to give you an example. Let's see. The payment standards calculate the amount of housing assistance that the family can receive. They receive the vouchers. The family that receives a voucher can select a unit with the rent that is below or above the payment standard. And again, the housing authorities can get into more detail about their specific payment standard for their specific unit size in the breakout session. I believe Tammy mentioned a family must pay 30% of their monthly adjusted income. Now, initially, during an initial rent, a family can pay as high as 40%. But again, the housing authority is making the determination for eligibility. Next slide. Making the determination for eligibility, as well as the amount of rent that the tenant can pay and the subsidy amount. We just put this slide in our presentation just to give you an idea of the flow. This is specifically a flow for the VASH program. The difference is with the VASH program, the veterans are provided case work and case management through the VA. Whereas if you are a family that's part of, let's say, just a tenant-based program, then your case management is only provided through the housing authority. So the VA caseworker is providing some specific case management because you're a veteran, but you're also assigned a housing authority caseworker to help the family navigate through the Section 8 program. Next slide. The next slide presents a list of the 22 housing authorities in the state of Arizona. Again, our field office is only responsible for the state of Arizona. And not all counties or all cities in the state of Arizona have a housing authority. And again, these 22 housing authorities have a specific jurisdiction that they administer their Section 8 vouchers. I think several of the housing authorities will be in the breakout session. I believe City of Phoenix, Mesa, Tempe, I believe Scottsdale's on the call, as well as Tucson. You can contact these housing authorities. Most of them have websites. You may want to ask them specifically for their website address. Not all housing authorities are part of city government. Some of them, of course, are part of county government as well. Next slide. So everybody that participates in the Section 8 program has a role in whether your participation is as a family or landlord or housing agency or even HUD. We all have obligations and responsibilities under the program. So the housing authorities, again, approves an eligible family's housing unit. The family and the landlord sign a lease, and the landlord and the housing authority signs a HAP contract. And the HAP contract and the lease runs concurrently within the terms of the lease. Next slide. This is a list of some family obligations. I won't read through all of them, but it gives you an idea of what the family, just the family is responsible for. They pay the security deposit to the landlord. The family signs the lease, whether it's an annual lease or a renewal lease. Within the lease has certain criteria and that we need to make sure that's in the lease, and we'll get to that in a minute. The family also, if they're not at zero income, the family has a portion of the rent that they also pay, and that's paid directly to the landlord. The family, of course, is responsible for the conditions of the unit to make sure that the conditions of the units remain safe and clean. And sorry, my screen said that I was muted. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah, it just cut out for a second. You're good.
Thank you.
You're good now.
All right. So go ahead and go to the next slide. And so again, here's a list of just some obligations of the landlord. The landlord's responsible for keeping the unit safe and sanitary. Of course, if there's some needed repairs, the housing authority and the family will notify the landlord about those needed repairs. The landlord is also responsible for signing that HAP contract. And along with that HAP contract is a document called a tenancy addendum. And the landlord's also responsible for eviction. I think a lot of, there's a misnomer out there that HUD or the housing authority evicts a tenant. We do not evict. The tenant is a tenant of, or the participant is a tenant of the landlord, and the landlord evicts the family. Now, housing authority can terminate a family for program violations, but the housing authority does not evict the family. Next slide. I'm not seeing the top of the slide, but I believe that slide is talking about what the housing authority's role is. They administer the voucher. They make all of the program eligibility determinations. The housing authority enters in contract with the landlord. The housing authority does an annual, at least annual re-exam of families to make sure they are eligible for the program. And again, the housing authority determines whether or not the participant of the program or the tenant family complies with the program. And if it's determined that they do not, then the housing authority can terminate that family from the program. Next slide, Ellie. HUD's role, we're the funding source. I believe later in the presentation, we talk about what HUD doesn't do, but we're the funding source. We make sure that the housing authorities receive their funding each year. We pay that housing authority, and there's a administrative fee associated with those funds. We, from time to time, have different notice of funding availability applications that the housing authorities can apply for different funding. And more importantly, or most importantly, we also monitor the program based on our regulations at 24 CFR 982 that we spoke about earlier. The HUD office monitors the program to ensure that not only the housing authorities, but the participants, as well as the landlords, that everyone is complying with the program. Next slide, Ellen. These are some of the things that we don't do, and I think it's because we get phone calls, believe that some folks feel that, or gets it confused, that the housing authority is the staff of HUD, and that HUD does the things that actually it is the role of the housing authority. We do not maintain participant files and caseloads. That is the role of the housing authority. We do not hold hearings for applicants or participants. Again, that is the role of the housing authority. HUD does not determine eligibility. We don't calculate income. We don't determine the market rents. And we don't manage leases. And there is, although this says that we don't handle discrimination cases, HUD handles discrimination cases, just not the HUD Public Housing Office. My office does not handle discrimination cases. Any discrimination complaints are referred to either the Attorney General's office or our HUD Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity Office. So when we say HUD does not do, it's the field office does not handle discrimination cases. Next slide. Next slide, Ellie. So one of the questions is, how do I become a landlord? The first thing you want to do is contact your local housing authority or housing authority in the jurisdiction where the unit is located. We recognize landlords can have units, all over the state, but you want to contact the housing authority, the list of 22 that I showed you earlier, where the unit is located. And so if you're an interested landlord, contact one of those housing authorities, and then they can give you more detail on their process, and also help post your vacant unit on their website if it's available. The housing authority does not steer families to select a particular unit. That is the decision of that family. One of the also roles of the landlord is the selection of the voucher family. You want to screen that tenant family. The housing authority does some screening as well, and they can assist you with some information for screening, but you as a landlord would be responsible for screening that family under your own screening criteria. There is a form called the request for tenancy approval that's completed by the landlord, and you normally would give that request for tenancy approval information back to the family so they can turn it in to the housing authority. And that just helps starts the process, gives the housing authority some information, gives the housing authority information on your the interested unit that the family desires to rent. It gives information also such as whether or not the landlord's going to pay utility or the family's going to pay the utility, things of that nature. And then again, the housing authority determines the rent and rent if the rent is reasonable compared to similar units in the marketplace. Next slide, Bill. The housing authority also does the unit inspections, typically call it housing quality standards inspections. And those standards, some of those standards are listed here on the screen that your unit has to meet. No lead-based paint, sanitary conditions, your smoke detectors must work. A lot of times tenants, we've known to folks take out the batteries in their smoke detectors. Well, that smoke detector needs to be working when that inspector comes in to inspect that unit. Next slide. Then that landlord again signs the lease with the tenant. Now HUD and the housing authority, we are not parties to the lease. However, the housing authority can review your lease to ensure that it meets certain HUD requirements, making sure that the name of the parties are on the lease, both the owner and the tenant's name, making sure that the unit address is there, that the monthly rent amount is there. A lot of landlords have standard lease, and you can, of course, submit a copy of that lease to the housing authority for them to take a look at. But again, there are certain criteria that must be on the lease. It should mention whether or not the utilities and the appliances are supplied by the owner, or if the utility and or appliances are supplied by the family. Just some of the things that your lease needs to incorporate. Once the HAP contract is signed again between the landlord and the housing authority, and then once that is executed, then the landlord can begin receiving their monthly HAP payment from the housing authority. I'm getting. And then any the rent portion that is not paid by the HAP contract is then paid by the tenant. Let's see. Next slide, Ellie. That's all I had to say. There were some myth busters. Next slide, Ellie. That we wanted to make sure all of the items listed here are false. Every one. Landlords can't charge Section 8 participants the same rent as their non-Section 8 tenants. That is false. The voucher tenants are problem tenants. Well, generally, if you're going to have a problem with a tenant, it's not going to matter whether or not they're on Section 8 or not. The Section 8 pays the subsidy part of the rent. Other issues that you may normally have with any other tenant, you may very well have with a Section 8 tenant. It is almost impossible to evict. You would evict a Section 8 tenant the same way you would evict any other family, whether they're on Section 8 or not, by giving them notice and taking them to court. If you accept one Section 8 tenant, then all of your units must be rented to Section 8. That is not true. Your HAP contract will be specific to the unit that the family on Section 8 is renting. Next slide. One of the things I believe Jason mentioned, the benefits of being a landlord. I believe he mentioned earlier, some landlords during the COVID, landlords that were not on the program had difficulty receiving rent. But if you're on the program, you will receive timely and dependable subsidy payment amounts from your local housing authority. And you will receive full rent payment, and that payment would come from either the local housing authority and or the tenant, or in some cases, all of your rent payment may come from the housing authority, depending on the income of the tenant. Next slide, Ellie. You will receive, as a landlord, you receive regular inspections, and we've been told that landlords appreciate that inspection. And as a landlord, you have a right to inspect your unit annually, or upon notification of that family that you're coming in to inspect. But know that housing authorities will send their inspectors in to inspect the units as well. You can request annual reasonable increases. Just know that at the anniversary date, just know that 60 days before the anniversary date, you must submit a request for increase. You want to always do it at least 60 days before the anniversary date. Now, I believe at an initial HAP, the first HAP, you cannot request an increase. And then the opportunity to provide affordable housing, which all of us appreciate. Landlords that participate in our program just know that more than 50% of the vouchers serve your elderly or our non-elderly disabled families. The remaining 45% assist single parent families. So these are definitely our families that are in need, and definitely in need of affordable housing because of their income. Next slide, Ellen. This is just some information of resources, how to obtain information. I think I saw one of the questions where someone asked how to obtain the resource book. The resource book can be obtained by requesting that either from the Office of Field Policy or from our office, the Office of Public Housing. These resource websites here will just give you some more in-depth information about the Section 8 program and how to become a landlord. I'd like to thank you for your time, and I'll turn everything back over to Solomon.
Thank you, Margaret. That was wonderful. And I feel like every time you've presented on HCBs, I've learned something new. So thank you. And there's some great questions coming through in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer those after the breakout sessions. Before we go to the breakout sessions, though, Fernando Moraga has kindly offered to speak to the source of income discrimination ordinance the city of Tucson passed, and played an instrumental role in actually getting that drafted. So I'll hand it over to Fernando now.
Thank you, Solomon. I apologize, I don't have camera capability on my computer at this time, but my name is Fernando Moraga. I'm the landlord supervisor here at the Tucson PHA. My role here is to be the point of contact for any outreach to get to landlords, as well as landlords that are willing to be part of the program. My role is to educate and process all of the RTAs that come into the building, as well as processing the contracts, rent increases, and overseeing pretty much anything with the landlord and education parts. Also, this is the city ordinance has also been something that has been added to my plate, where I'm responsible for training, educating, as well as enforcement of the ordinance. The ordinance has been something that has been a huge success here in Tucson. It was basically started out because to help the homelessness problem here, to get as many families as we can housed, and to get as many landlords to participate with the program. When we first started, before it was put into law, we're averaging about 12 to 13 RTAs a day. Since the ordinance has come into law, we're now doing 20 to 40 per day, which has also increased our contracts processing as well as everything else. So it's been quite busy here. Our education piece covers our client briefings as well as our landlord briefings that we do twice a month to get everyone educated, and as well as property visits to go out. On the flip side of that, I'm also responsible for the enforcement, making sure that if there are any kind of complaints that come in, that I contact the client, find out what the complaint is, and then talk to the landlord and find out what it is. Thankfully, we have been able to squash everything that comes through. There hasn't been anything really important that's gone to litigation. But based on my education onto the landlord, if I feel that there needs to be further enforcement done, then I would proceed to the EOP and let them process that into a court proceeding if need be. Like I said, thankfully, we have not needed to go that route.
Well, let's go.
Okay, if there was a question or not. But it's been a great success here in Tucson. I look forward to it. I understand that there's going to be some more training on that later in the year, and I look forward to participating with that. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to educate where I can and help where I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. Yeah, and we're very much looking forward to that later on this summer. Ellie, if it would be possible to pull up the breakout rooms, and just before we head on into them, I was wondering if it might be possible for staff and leadership from the PHAs just to pop on camera and just say hi. From Mesa, we've got Mary Brandon. Hey, Mary. Oh.
I'm sorry.
Mary Brandon.
Hi, I'm Mary Brandon with the City of Mesa. I'm the Deputy Director here and I oversee the housing. And with me is Maribel Flores.
Hello.
Hey, both. And from Phoenix, I believe we've got Andre Surratt and Lenia Sotelo.
Hi, good morning. Elenia Sotelo, Housing Manager with the city's Housing Department. And I will pass the baton to Andre to introduce himself. Andre, we can't hear you, or at least I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. I'm Andre Surratt. I'm the Managing Director here at Arizona Quadale, and we are contracted with the City of Phoenix to run their City of Phoenix Housing Choice Voucher Program.
Thank you both. And from Scottsdale, I believe we've got Christina and/or Christopher Grossbeck on.
Hi, Solomon. I'm actually with the City of Tempe now. I'm the management assistant for the Deputy Director of Human Services here. I help administer Hometown for All, landlord engagement. I'm here with Carmen Jack, Housing Supervisor.
Great. And is Irma joining today as well from Tempe, or will it just be you?
She may be able to jump on, but you can expect me for the whole breakout section.
Awesome. We've got Fernando, who we just heard from, and Terry Galligan.
Yes, good morning, everybody. I'm Terry Galligan. I'm the Deputy Director here at the City of Tucson's Housing and Community Development Department.
Thanks, everyone. And Ellie, if it's possible to pull up those
Yes.
breakout session.
Indeed. I want to let you know, first of all, I just want to give just so much gratitude to HUD for that very informational presentation, as well as all of the questions that were coming into chat. Like Solomon said, we're going to do our best to make sure that they are answered. If not directly now at the end of this, maybe possibly they might fit your opportunity to meet with representatives from the different housing authorities that we have represented here. I'm about to open up the breakout room. So wherever you take a look through your device, whether it be your phone, your laptop, or your desktop, you are given an opportunity to look for the breakout room section, and you get to choose which room you want to be in. So we are going to have a room with Phoenix representatives, another room with the Tucson representatives, another one for Tempe, Mesa, and Scottsdale. So you get to self-select and spend some time with those representatives, learning a little bit more about those nuances that are related to the cities or the towns that you find yourself in. And so I just opened up all of the rooms. You're all unassigned, but you have the opportunity to join which room you would like. We have 30 minutes. I'll be jumping in and letting folks know, plus I'll broadcast where, like, when we're going to be coming to an end to come back together. Reverend Katie also put into chat, if you want to drop where you want to go in the chat, we can assign you if you have difficulty doing it yourself. And so Debbie, I will send you into Tucson. Well, I thought I would. Yeah, there you go. Susan, I'll send you into Phoenix. I'll try to anyway. Every time I do it, somebody joins a room. Hold on, Susan. There you go. Sandy, let's see if I can get you.
You give it a few seconds, and if they're still there, yeah.
Yeah.
Like running after everyone.
Yeah, it is. It's like, hey, they're accepting, but I don't know what that means. I can't get you. Yeah.
Looks like we got people off.
Every time you're going to like assign folks to, it shifts everything. And so give it 1 second. Yeah, Billy, I think I just got her in. Okay, good. Nasha, Phoenix. It's weird because Zoom on some, oh, we can pause the recording.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. So sorry, I know that in our group, we were in midst of conversation, but lots of opportunities for us to continue to learn. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for that. This is your opportunity to, I don't know, Solomon, if you would like us to open the floor up for questions. You can use the raise the hand feature, which is if you go to however you are zooming into mute, stop video. It'll also give you the opportunity to where you saw the breakout rooms, and then you'll see a reactions key or button. If you select that reactions button, you'll see an opportunity at the very bottom that says raise hand. Please go ahead and raise your hand, and we can accept questions that way. Or if Solomon, if you want to take a stab at reading some of those questions in chat, and we can start doing that. What do you think?
Sure. Yeah, I might just actually go back through the chat, and anyone who's asked the question, kind of give you the opportunity to ask folks, yourselves, because I know, at least for me, often when you hear more, other things come to mind. So yeah, why don't we start with the chat, and then we can kind of provide people the opportunity to just raise hands and ask directly too.
That's great.
We will be circulating those materials, the resource guide, yeah, and the slides from Margaret's presentation after we get off this. Amy Beck Jones had a question about rent and reasonableness of rent. Amy, would you just still like that answered? Yeah, she was asking specifically about talking points for potential landlords. And yeah, we can also circulate some of those. Billy had a question about whether felons qualify for Section 8. I know, Margaret, if you want to have a stab at that.
So I would highly recommend that you send the individual person directly to a local housing authority. Housing authorities screen, they do criminal background checks, but they screen for lifetime sex offenders. They can deny admission to a person that's engaged in the use of illegal controlled substance. So I would have you refer the individual to the particular housing authority in their jurisdiction, and allow the housing authority to make that determination whether or not that person's eligible or not. I will remind everybody, I don't know if, I know I didn't say it in my presentation or whether or not it was stated in the breakout rooms. A individual cannot apply for Section 8 unless the housing authority's waiting list is open. And you want to, you can direct the individuals to the housing authority's website. The website will let you know whether or not their Section 8 waiting list is open, but no one can apply if the waiting list is closed. But just general questions. For example, the question about the felony, of course, they're not going to do any screening if a person's not an applicant for the program, but they can maybe explain a little more detail to that individual of what they might be looking for when they are being screened.
Thanks,
And
Margaret.
just to let you know, Solomon, because I went into the breakout room, I don't have access to those questions in chat, which is why I'm quietly waiting for you to.
Cool. Lori Sobel had a question. Lori, do you want to ask that directly or can read it out?
Sure. Well, my question was about assisting folks that have a Section 8 voucher or housing choice voucher that come to us for rental assistance for their portion of the rent that they've fallen behind on. We were told by someone, a social worker from the city of Scottsdale, that if we paid any portion of their portion of the rent, that it would violate the terms of their agreement for their voucher. So I'm curious if that's true.
So a participant cannot receive dual subsidy. For example, you can't be a Section 8 tenant in Scottsdale and receive Section 8 or subsidy assistance from Tempe or Phoenix or Chandler or any other Section 8. So I'm not quite sure. You can't be on the public housing Section 8 program and also be receiving subsidy from the multifamily Section 8 program.
I understand that, but our payments come from individual or private donations, and we provide eviction prevention assistance to families. So it's not another federal program. It's more of a private program that would be providing that assistance.
And is it a one-time assistance usually?
Yeah.
Something, because you also have to, and I'll let maybe Elenia or some of the other housing authorities chime in, because you also have to, housing authorities determine eligibility of a family based on income. So we want to make sure that whatever they're receiving, is not counted as part of their income. But to my knowledge, a one-time assistance to help them pay rent or pay their portion. If I'm understanding you correctly, I don't think that's an issue. Elena, you want to jump in?
Yes, Margaret, and we were chatting about this in our breakout session too, exactly when we were pulled back into the larger group. And so that is something, that Andre was discussing and getting clarification, because sporadic, one-time, non-reoccurring payments are something that we want to be informed about, but that are typically not calculated into that household income. And that's something that we will verify, because you're correct. The household income is reviewed in order to ensure income eligibility. And I think Andre might have reached out to the speaker as well, since we got cut out.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, we got cut out, but yeah, I think you guys all kind of hit the nail on the head. If it's something that's going to be recurring every single month, this agency is going to be assisting, or whatever the case is, certainly know that because that could count it as income. So it's just a one-time deal or whatever the case is. Certainly that'll be different. I think the best thing to do though is always before, for the voucher order, before they decide they want to take something or anything, it never hurts to check with the housing authority. Hey, if I take this, is it going to jeopardize or do whatever? Or how is it going to impact my assistance or anything? There's definitely nothing wrong with checking with the housing authority before you decide you just want to go take money from everywhere or various agencies or whatever the case is. Certainly you should just probably reach out to the housing authority and just make sure A, it's not going to jeopardize it, but B, also how it's going to impact the assistance, if at all.
Okay, so it sounds like it won't terminate their voucher if we did a one-time rental assistance for their portion of past due rent.
And yeah, and again, I don't want to, speak for Scottsdale. It sounded like you guys might have been having a different discussion, but certainly I think you might want to reach out to them directly and kind of see what it is that they're talking about, because they might be misunderstanding or anything. But I would certainly hate for the voucher holder's assistance to be jeopardized in the event you are trying to assist or do whatever. So I think you definitely want to reach out to them and clarify just to make sure that they, again, the voucher holder's assistance or their participation in the program isn't jeopardized.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could interject, my name is Christina Cooley. I'm late to the meeting today, but I am with the city of Scottsdale. So I believe that the social worker that reached out to us from one of our service agencies, and what we had discussed with them is that people were going and getting portions of or their entire rent paid and then using that to ride the next several months of their portion. So it was kind of offsetting that, or they were going to multiple different agencies and getting their portion paid for without reporting anything to our agency. So yes, in doing so and getting that, we were explaining to them it is a violation of the program to get the duplicate subsidies. As far as getting other rental assistance to pay what we're paying. So that was what we explained to them. We had kind of suggested to our local service agencies that maybe it'd be better to talk with the individual, see why they're struggling to pay their portion of rent, since it is dependent on their income. And then maybe there would be other options available that you could pay for out of whatever the funding is. And so it allows us to continue to do that. But that's where that discussion came from in Scottsdale, is that we were seeing a lot of people going to several different agencies each month, having a lot of money coming in or paying their rent, and then taking large credits with the landlord moving forward. And then having several months where they're not paying what their responsible portion is.
Thank you for clarifying that, but that's what Lori and I were trying to get to. But one question I have, and this is a concern I have, is that a lot of people that are coming in asking who are on vouchers, and what we try to explain to them is that they need to go to their worker and let them know that there's a crisis so that they can assist them with that. And what we've come across is that they're not getting a response that's quick enough, and the landlords are threatening to evict. So while they're waiting for the worker to say, hey, yes, we're going to lower your portion until this crisis is fixed or whatever, they're not getting the information, and landlords are threatening to evict at that time. So there's kind of I believe that's why social agencies like ourselves, try to assist until they can get the worker to help the person with lowering the rent, whether it be a job loss or death in the family. There's a crisis, and they're just not getting a response in due time to assist before a landlord is threatening to evict.
And I guess I understand that as well. I would ask, if you have that, you refer them back to us, or also let them know that per the contract we hold with the landlord, they are not to be held responsible for the housing agency's portion. A lot of times what happens is when we get those changes reported, it happens perhaps after a check run for the month, and the payment will come, but it is coming a little bit later. But the tenant is not responsible for the housing agency's portion, and we are happy to respond and let the landlord know and advise them that this is what's happened and that difference is coming, but the tenant is not to be responsible for that. And that's in the contract between our agencies and the landlords.
Okay, is that also when, I'll just give you a hypothetical, the tenant usually pays $700 of their rent, and this month or they lost their job and they're unable to come up with the full portion, so that's when they come to us. Does the landlord need to assist them? I mean, are they allowed to just go ahead and evict them while that tenant is trying to let the Section 8 people know, hey, I can't pay the whole rent. I don't have a job anymore. My income is, there's been a drastic change. That's when they're not getting a response, whether it be yes, we're gonna lower it, or no, you have to come up with it.
And I can hop in here again, unless somebody from HUD or somebody else wants to. It's going to be up to the PHA's policy as to when that is implemented and when it was submitted in writing to the housing agency. So if they've submitted it to us in writing, then we usually make it implemented the immediate following month. If that happens again after the check run, let's say for July, we just did our check run last week. So if something comes in now that somebody has lost their job, yes, it's going into effect for July. However, that payment is going to be late. And it's my understanding in the HAP contract is how that is stated is that the housing authority can be responsible for late fees if it's beyond the first 60 days of an initial move-in, and the tenant is not responsible for the housing agency fees.
That's great information. I appreciate that. And that's one of the things you just touched on something that's really important, and I will tell my team, is to make sure that they're letting the client know you need to do these things in writing.
You have to do it in writing, absolutely, and that's imperative. So the sooner that they bring that into us, the sooner we can get that processed and responded to.
We've got a question from Tammy Marks about a member who had to surrender a Section 8 apartment. I might have a quick stab at that one. It would probably depend upon the circumstances as to whether or not the subsidy was tied to the property or they had a voucher themselves. So I would, go ahead, Tammy.
I just met with him this morning, and he told me that he had a voucher. There was a situation where something happened and he brought someone up to his unit, and right after the person left his unit, the landlord came up and said he didn't like the company he was keeping and that he had 2 hours to surrender. But he said that he told them that his voucher should still be in effect. So I want to try and find him a new Section 8 property, but his voucher, but we need to make sure his voucher is in effect because he's on limited Social Security.
Yeah, in that case, I would suggest reaching out to the housing authority directly.
Okay, perfect.
And if they've got a caseworker or somebody who had been handling their voucher, to get in touch with them and see what the status of it is as soon as possible.
Okay, I will call them later. Thank you.
Sure. And here, Mary just chimed in as well on that front. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Does anybody have any questions that just come to mind now?
I have a question, Solomon. This is Mary with City of Mesa. Will you be sharing our contact information with everyone on the call? So if they have questions directly to our housing authorities, to our area, that they could contact us?
Absolutely. Yeah, that'll be great. And might include as well the contact information on just for the other PHAs as well in the state, in case you happen to have folks that are outside the jurisdiction of those PHAs.
Yeah, we will be following up with everyone. You'll be able to view the link for today's meeting to share widely with your networks, anyone you think would be interested. by the end of this week, you can check out Arizona Faith Network on YouTube. That's where we post our videos. This is a larger part of our Housing 101 series for us to become educated, to learn about all of the different aspects that are related to housing. And so with permission, we'll share those slides from today. We'll also have some contact information for each of the folks that presented here today. I really want to take this opportunity and thank each and every one of you, especially our presenters. We know how busy you are. We see you, we respect you. We're grateful for your time that you made sure that our houses of worship and our participants have had the opportunity to learn from you, and then in turn continue to educate others out into the community. So this was absolutely fantastic. I just want to thank Solomon for his diligence in getting this done, and Reverend Katie for making this partnership possible. With that, I just want to give you just a couple more minutes. Anybody else have any questions or any comments that they would like to share? Yes, Betsy, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Whoops, I'll try the video again. I have a dog that likes to join in, but I had just come across that the Maricopa Association of Governments has a new initiative started. Home is where it all starts. And there's going to be a toolkit coming out, and I think it's just barely getting off the ground. Have you heard about that? I can send you.
Yeah, I have not. I love that you have and that you can share that with us. That would be lovely.
Okay. It's really a campaign to try to, what it said in some of the reading I did was that affordable housing has taken on a negative kind of tone, especially with folks who are sort of NIMBY. And so they're trying to reframe it. And home is where it all starts, and talking about the positives of a stable home, of a place to be, a community. And it sounds pretty exciting to me, but I think it's Amy St. Peter at MAG that is working on it.
That's awesome. That makes sense. Amy's doing such great work there.
Okay, I will.
Thank you, Betsy. I really appreciate that. And there's another great resource. So with the Arizona Faith Network, we have something called the Arizona Faith Forum. It is a posting board, a discussion board, if you will. You don't necessarily have to become a member of the Arizona Faith Network, although we always encourage members. That's how we build power and strength in all of the good ways. But you can self-select which category of information you would like to get from any of from our theological dialogue to our social justice side of the house. And if you only want to get information about hunger and housing, then sign up for Hunger and Housing and share information. There is part of our educational outreach at AFN is about being in the spaces where you can't be because of all of the things that are causing us to be distracted, such as, like work and life. But we want to make sure those things are accessible to you. And then in return, we can only be in so many spaces. So information like Betsy just shared are very, very important. And you can post that on there, and there's information that you can get. And so I encourage you, Reverend Katie put that link into chat. With that, Reverend Katie and Solomon, would you like to say anything in addition?
Just a quick shout out to all of the leadership, Director Thomas. It's been wonderful getting to know you, and Solomon, and so many other experts on this call. Again, thank you. Thank you, Ellie, for pulling all of these details together. I'm so glad that you stepped up to the plate and did this phenomenal work. But I'm just grateful for you all. Please stay connected and know that there are a lot of efforts to really help get folks into transitional housing and affordable housing out there. This is one avenue. We're going to be exploring a lot of other avenues, including pocket zoning is one thing we're going to be diving into too on campus with some of our city folks. So stay tuned and stay connected. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
I would just say too, if there are any topics that would be of use to you all, please let us know. Like if it'd be helpful for us to do something similar on housing discrimination, fair housing, yeah, just let us know. We'd be more than happy to pull that together. It's been great, even just for me to get a refresher and to connect with you all. So thank you all for being here.
Yes, thank you. Blessings to you. Enjoy the weather this week. Or coming at it with a positive attitude. Enjoy the weather this week. If you are in state, if you're not, then shame on you. You should be here. I'm just kidding. It's so good to have you here. Thank you for all that you are in our community. Thank you for making Arizona the state in the United States to come live and to help people get housed so we can all enjoy the beauty of our desert and our community. So yes, enjoy the dry heat until the monsoon starts. So thank you all. Blessings. Have a great week. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank